Hey guys, welcome to Creatures of Ancient Texas. I am so excited to be talking about this today. I love dinosaurs, I love prehistoric animals, and the fact that Texas has so many really cool and awesome ones just gets me so excited. The reason why I'm going to talk to you about this is because we often think of Texas as this sort of dry, has plains and rivers and a few escarpments, and we take it for granted that Texas has been so diverse in its biomes over time, and you can kind of see that through the different creatures we'll be talking about today. So it makes you really reconsider what Texas is and how land changes over time, and it's just such a cool topic. So I'm going to jump straight in by talking about what I mean by ancient Texas. As you know, the scale for the timeline for this is huge. Dinosaurs themselves, and we'll be talking about more than just dinosaurs, but dinosaurs themselves were around for millions and millions of years. If you look all the way over here to the right-hand side, you'll notice we've only been around, 200,000 years, and that looks like a little bitty bar right there. That's nothing compared to the amount of time that dinosaurs were essentially the predominant creature on Earth. Also, look at the amount of time between us and dinosaurs. Just a huge gap of time. So there was no Flintstones kind of thing where people were riding dinosaurs to work or anything like that. It was us being separate from them. But we will talk about creatures that will fall into the human gap as well, sort of the larger mammals. As we move through, I'm going to be showing you where these animals fit. So these different periods of time, you have the Cambrian Period, and you start getting your first dinosaurs all the way in the Mesozoic era. So you have three areas where dinosaurs are: the Jurassic, and Cretaceous. And then humans are all the way up here. We're barely even on this thing. So it gives you like an understanding of how big of a time scale we're on. So I'll try to let you know where these animals fit in this time scale. So even if you can tell it's here, between dinosaurs, the different periods in which they existed is very, very large scale. So something like a T-Rex would probably definitely was separated by millions of years from the Stegosaurus, like hundreds of millions of years, which is kind of weird to think about. They would never probably have crossed paths from each other. So there's a lot of different evolutions or changes over a long period of time, and we tend to think of dinosaurs as in this one time period. And you also notice that the landform changes. If Texas is right here, when we first start together as one supercontinent called Pangaea, by the time we get to the early dinosaurs, you'll notice that even sections of Texas are underwater. So that's not even the Gulf Coast there. And there's this one giant island that makes up Eurasia and North America. And we still have water in the Jurassic period. So some of these dinosaurs we're talking about, Texas was partially underwater. So certain sections would have land dinosaurs and others wouldn't. And the Cretaceous, and then we kind of finally look more like the modern Texas that you know. So let's go to the earliest one. We're going to go all the way back here, more like the Silurian period for the giant sea scorpions. Now, these things are called Eurypterids. Now, Eurypterids are just so cool. They are these giant 10 feet long sea scorpions. Now, there's some really small ones, of course. That's one of the biggest ones I've seen, between 8 and 10. And they're not real scorpions. They don't have a poisonous sting. They might have even been scavengers, but they are just ginormous. That's probably more likely the size of a typical one. These guys are maybe hunters. Now that's not a real one, obviously, because they are mostly fossilized, but I could not see myself swimming in Port A with one of those guys in water. That would freak me out. Let's look at a creature. Now look, we're already down here at Silurian. I'm going to jump up all the way up here to the Cretaceous. So we're going to miss some of these early dinosaurs here. Most of the dinosaurs you're familiar are Cretaceous dinosaurs, and one of the ones you might look familiar to you is the Styracosaurus. It looks a lot like the Triceratops, but it's different. It's 25 feet long. That is huge. If the average person is about 6 feet tall, then think about 25 feet. Just a big animal. You can notice that it is different from the Triceratops. It doesn't have the horns on its head to defend itself in the same way, and it's got one primary horn, and then it has these frills along the top of its head, and it has very large jaw muscles as well. So they believe that it had a different way of combating enemies. And so it reminds us of the Triceratops, but it's not exactly the same. And its name actually is a Greek word that means the steel tip of a spear, because its horn reminded them of a spear tip. So it's Styracosaurus.
Maybe it's the power trying to come back on.
Here's a creature you're definitely familiar with, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's so cool that the T-Rex is from Texas. It just kind of makes sense. The T-Rex would have been around the Cretaceous period too, along with the Styracosaurus. And in Texas, we have found some parts of one. We haven't really seen a complete one. The most complete one is this red one here. Her name's Sue. Sue was found up, I think, in Wyoming. And they're pretty big creatures. What they're most famous for, what makes them so popular, is one, they look different with the small arms and the large head, but their bite, oh my goodness, their bite is the most impactful bite of any creature, land creature, I should say, that's ever existed. So, the second place creature has a bite pressure of 18,000 pounds per square inch. That's a lot. The T-Rex, so compare 18,000 to 45,000 pounds. It can bite through bones like nothing. There's just nothing that can compare to the T-Rex, and it's fast, 18 miles per hour. So, western Texas, like El Paso, the mountains and basins regions, where they found some of the bones and remnants of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Our next creature that I would like to talk about is just kind of a cool side note. It's called the Alamo Source. You knew I had to talk about the Alamo in some way. So there's a dinosaur named the Alamo Source. And it was one I didn't know a whole lot about, but it is super fascinating. It lived in the same time period as the T-Rex. So these guys were in contact with each other. Look at the size of that thing. I mean, could you imagine just seeing that crossing the horizon? It would blow my mind. And look at it compared to the T-Rex. I mean, the T-Rex is a fairly large creature, but it's got nothing on the Alamo Source. So, and that's not even the biggest one, according to this. This is not even the biggest size of the Alamo Source. So it's a huge, huge creature. And I just wanted to mention it because of its cool historical sort of name. We're going to kind of move out of the time period of the dinosaurs. So the Cretaceous period, that's the end of dinosaurs. And we're going to move to this period right here where humans are existing. So this is more of the rodents and mammals period, which is where we're at. And a creature you're very familiar with, which is the Mastodon. You also hear, of the woolly mammoth. They're two different creatures. The Mastodon is a little bit smaller. It doesn't have a huge hump on the back or on the head like the mammoth does. But it's still a large, large creature, and it's just better suited for where we lived. And there's definitely contact between humans and these creatures. We have a lot of bones, like in Palestine, Texas, and Waco has a phenomenal museum where they have a family of these that were preserved together. So we definitely had them out more towards East Texas. That's where most of them were well preserved. So look at the size of that. That's a picture of me a couple years ago visiting one out in California. And this is a mammoth, not a mastodon, but you get a sense of the size. By studying the bones of these creatures, we've discovered so much about early humans. It's because of artifacts. The artifacts kind of indicate, like right here, you see in this bone, a arrowhead. When you first look at it, you might not see that, but as they 3D scan it, and you can kind of tell that it has the shape of an arrowhead. Look at that side. You just jutted into it. And that implies that, yeah, they were using spears to hunt. And if you're using spears, you're more than likely, well, you're probably not hunting by yourself. So you're probably hunting in a group, and that means there's a group mentality with humans. And spears aren't things that you're jabbing into the legs of creatures to kill them instantly. So they're probably following these creatures. They're hitting them hard, letting them bleed out. So the connection to the animal, it just tells us so much about early humans and the fact that humans were hunting them. Did we hunt them to extinction? It's hard to always kind of tell if we were the deciding factor, but we know that humans were hunting these things actively. Here's another animal that lives in that same time period around with humans, probably a little bit earlier, but it's one you're very familiar with. Smilodon fatalis, the fatal smile, the killing smile, the saber-toothed tiger, or the scimitar tiger. I've heard it called that too. Man, what a cool creature. It's a little bit smaller than the modern African lion, but its teeth, those two front teeth, are very distinctive. 8 inches long off the top of the lip. And a cool fact about it is that it hunted large creatures much larger than itself. Here it is hunting a ground sloth, and we'll talk about them in a little bit more in a second. But they hunt it by themselves. We know that lions today hunt in prides, but the saber-toothed tiger was a solo hunter. It was a very isolated creature. And that reminds us more of the modern cat, opposed to some of the African lions, which, you know, the difference between a tiger and a lion kind of points out how these creatures adapted to their environment very differently. Alright, we're staying in the same time period. I just keep on pulling this up so you can get a sense of scale. The short-faced bear. This is an awesome creature. When it's on its all fours, it's about 6 feet. But when it stands, it's about 12 feet tall. Man, that's huge. I mean, the normal ceiling height is 10 feet. So it's taller than most ceilings whenever it's standing. And you'll notice it has these long legs. This creature looks kind of like a hyena to me. It can run really fast, 40 miles per hour. That is incredibly fast. It's one of the fastest bears that's ever existed. And it's one of the biggest. Only the polar bear, as far as I know, is the only bear that's bigger than the short-faced bear. There is some interesting about it too. There's a belief that humans might have overhunted it or been in competition for it. Its food source, where we're eating its food, and that caused it to kind of die off. But I haven't seen a lot of conclusive proof or research to support that. Alright, same time period. Megatherium. Our last creature today, the giant ground sloth. We know they were definitely in South America. We know that there are some smaller versions up in Ohio and New Jersey, but here in Texas, I've seen that there might have been some Megatheriums, these giant 16 feet tall. I mean, the size of an elephant. Ground sloths. And they don't necessarily look exactly like the sloth that you know, but they're very, very similar. And I think they're so fascinating. I mean, huge creature. These guys were able to walk on their back feet. They were able to walk on the front, on the sides. They had these armor plates on their back. Their bones kind of almost like a coat of armor. So if a creature was attacking them from behind, it would hit those bony plates and not get to any vital organs. We know that they dived. They were deep sea divers, which is kind of crazy. And an interesting fact is we know that humans definitely had a lot of contact and might even hunt these things to extinction. We found some bones, a set of them in Ohio from about 13,000 years ago, that had 41 different scars on it and looked like they had been taken off the limbs of this creature. They had been scraping the bones to get the meat off. So know that humans interacted with this thing a lot. I mean, we probably hunted them to extinction, but in this picture, this little baby guy is about to take me out. So maybe it was payback time. I'm not really sure. But anyways, guys, I love this topic. I think it's very, very fascinating, and I hope that you enjoyed learning about the creatures of prehistoric Texas.